So thank you all for joining with us, staying with us. We're now going to get started with the summit's panel for this year. I would like to introduce our moderator for this morning's panel, Keeping California Competitive. Dr. Micah Weinberg is CEO and president of California Forward. This cross-sector civic leadership group is committed to producing prosperity for all Californians in all of the state's regions and to improving government performance and accountability. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Micah Weinberg. Sir.
Thank you very much. All right. Yeah, we do have an all-star panel drawn from a variety of sectors, public, private, and civic, to talk about this unique moment that we find ourselves in. So we'll be talking about ports, we'll be talking about Omicron, we'll be talking about, is the economy coming roaring back? Who really needs help? What parts of the state need help? What's going on in Southern California? So what I'm going to do for starters is I'm going to turn it over to each of the panelists to make quick introductory remarks, introduce themselves in whatever way they would like to, and then we will move into a series of questions, and then we will get to your questions. We've got a lot of time here. We've got even over an hour, I don't want you to miss the opportunity to pose your most pressing Southern California Summit economic questions to the members of this panel. So to start things off, I'm going to turn it over to my friend, Dee Dee Myers. She is the senior advisor to Governor Newsom and runs the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. So you have been quite busy recently, Director Myers.
We have indeed, Micah, and thank you. And it's terrific to be here this morning. So thanks to SCAG for having us in this panel and this important discussion. As you said, Micah, I run the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, GoBiz, as you all know it. And we lead the state's job growth and economic development efforts. We offer a range of business services, including attraction and retention and expansion of services, site selection, permit streaming, clearing of regulatory hurdles, a number of other services that we like to think of ourselves as the concierge to the business community, but we also oversee international trade and development. We have a big logistics role in this current moment. We run the Visit California. It sits in GoBiz. They do a great job of promoting California and really trying to lift up and help the travel and tourism industry recover. We have the Film Commission. We run the ZEV, the Zero Emission Vehicles Market Strategy. So we have kind of a bit of a dog's breakfast of services and programs, but all in service of lifting up the business community and being an advocate for business across California, including, of course, Southern California with our state's biggest city and its really robust part of the economy. And I also consider myself to be a cheerleader, and more than a cheerleader, but a cheerleader for California. I think sometimes there's a narrative out there, it seems to never end, that California is over, the California dream is gone. And I just vehemently disagree with that. We have challenges, you all live with them every day, and we'll talk more about what those are. But at the same time, we have a consumer base 40 million strong, a marketplace that turns innovation into commercialization. We are on the cutting edge of new technologies, and we're an innovation economy like no other, really like no other. In Bloomberg, we love Bloomberg when they rank us high, but they always cite us as the world's #1 innovation economy. We also have the world's best higher education system. If anybody pays attention to U.S. News and World Report, and those of you with high school and college age kids know well, we have 6 of the 11 best public universities in the nation. And that is obviously a source of great new technology and information that we then, again, turn from just ideas into really stunning economic assets. So we have an unparalleled concentration of assets here. The state is thriving in so many ways. We're home to the hemisphere's largest port complex. We'll talk more about that later. We are on the receiving end of more than half of all venture capital in the country. 53% last year. Florida, 3%. Texas, 2%. So when you hear that Texas is the new home of technology and innovation, think twice. So we understand that that lead is not something that we can take for granted. we need to really continue to invest and develop and work with the business community to make sure that we're not creating too many obstacles. I know sometimes it feels like we create plenty, but we're not going to rest on our laurels, and we're here to have a dialogue about, what the challenges are as well as what the assets are, and to make sure that we're addressing them. But I'm happy to talk more about that. But I think we have a high class problem in a great economy that faces some very significant challenges. But let's solve those problems by working together.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Director Myers. I'd now like to turn it over to Dr. Daryl Fairweather. She is the Chief Economist at Redfin.
Hi, thank you for having me. So in my role as Chief Economist of Redfin, I study the housing market, and a lot of that comes down to studying why is it that homes are so expensive, and California definitely has its share of expensive housing markets. There are so many reasons for that, and we can get into that into the panel. I'd be happy to discuss it, but I think the pandemic is offering us an opportunity to kind of reevaluate the way that we think about housing, the way we think about transit. And I think many people have reevaluated their reasons for living in a particular area. And that could be something to California's advantage, that people may choose to live in California, even if their finance job is in New York or somewhere else. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here, but challenges are present as well.
Great. Yeah, we'll definitely get into that. We have not solved the housing affordability crisis in this state. And then the pandemic reshuffled all kinds of things with work from home and everything else. So we'll talk about the economic implications of that. But let me turn to another representative of the private sector. David Hickey is the Vice President of Western Business Markets for Verizon. David, thanks to have you with us this morning.
Thanks, Micah. Happy to be here as well. I'm glad I didn't have to follow Dee Dee and what she had to say there. That was awesome and passionate. Thank you. Hey, I'm Dave Hickey. I've been with Verizon for 20 years. I handle small and medium business. I spent time serving our public and private sector in lots and lots of ways. We're really focused right now on bringing tools to kind of help in the SMB recovery, small and medium business recovery. And I would say there's been a lot of learning. Happy to share today around what people are doing, what companies are enabling, and the tools and the challenges they're facing. And some of those big challenges are broadband alone, right? And making sure that there's business internet and home internet. And so we've been spending a lot of time, lots of investments here. I live in Southern California. And so I agree with Dee Dee, the dream is real and living here. And if you don't love 70 degrees weather, then I guess you're in the wrong place. But really focused on that. And we've been a lot of Micah focused on business transformation, because I would tell you, as companies faced the pandemic, they were caught flat-footed, a lot of them were, and not knowing what resources or tools, and sometimes the complexities that came along with that. Our teams have done a really good job, I would say, educating and investing in that. And I'll talk later about the tools and resources and the network that we continue to invest nationally, but specifically here in Southern California as well. And we've got a theme that we've really went after the last year, and you'll see as we go into 2022, is really a mobile, connected, secure workforce, because now that workforce is everywhere, and ensuring they're able to get that. So happy to be part of the panel and happy to answer any questions as we go, Micah.
Sounds great. And then finally, for our round of introductions, we have Estela Reyes. She is Senior Vice President for Enhancing Community at the LA Clean Tech Incubator.
Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much, Micah, and thank you, Skag, for having me. I am the Senior Vice President for Enhancing Community at LACI, which stands for the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator. We are a nonprofit organization focused on building an inclusive green economy through 3 strategies. So the first is unlocking innovation, and that's all of the work we're doing to support our startups, including CEO coaching, tailored curriculum, access to potential customers and investors to help our companies grow. The second is market transformation, and that's all of the work we're doing around thought leadership and public-private partnership to move the needle on the three sectors within clean tech that we're focused on, which are zero emissions transportation, clean energy, and circular economy. And then finally, enhancing community, which is the team that I'm on, which is focused on creating pathways for underrepresented groups to participate in the green economy at every stage, from ideation to workforce to deployment. And what I'm excited to share today, the focus of today's summit, inclusive economic growth, is actually directly aligned with Lacey's mission of building an inclusive green economy. And one big area of focus for our team is building out an inclusive pipeline for the green workforce. So at the beginning of this year, Lacey actually published a green jobs report researched by HR&A advisors and funded by both the California Workforce Development Board and the City of LA Workforce Development Board. And it offers an in-depth analysis of the landscape of green jobs in LA and how to grow an economy here that is greener, stronger, and more inclusive. So just to quickly define, like, green jobs, they are in businesses that directly produce green goods or services, or they are jobs in more traditional businesses that are directly responsible for making their establishments more environmentally friendly. And findings are super promising. On average, green jobs are high road jobs, which typically have better pay and benefits than the average LA County job, while offering upward career mobility and safe workplaces. And also, green jobs are available at all levels of education. On average, 75% of green jobs are accessible without a bachelor's degree. So these are super promising findings, and I'm excited to chat more about inclusive economic growth through green jobs.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So we're not going to start with the softball. We're going to start with a fastball, but we did share the questions ahead of time. So I hope you're ready to be the catcher for California as well as the cheerleader for California, because we'll start with you, Director Myers.
Okay.
So the strength of California's economy, depends a lot on what angle you look at it from. So love we're creating unicorns like we're a fantasy novel, we definitely have a tremendous amount of strengths for our economy. And I know you're working on this. We have made a lot of progress on poverty, but we still have among the highest rates of poverty in the country adjusted for the cost of living. We have significant racial, economic, geographic inequities in LA City and our rural communities throughout the state. What is it that we can do to really make progress on those, aspects of our economy that really are not as strong?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point that it depends on what lens you look at our economy through, right? Because you can tell a lot of different stories, but I think one of the things the pandemic has done is sort of rip the skin off of the certain perspectives. I think we can no longer pretend that we don't have tremendous inequality in our state and in Southern California, and that the pandemic has not exacerbated some of those trends. So we know that the communities that were most impacted by the pandemic were those that could least afford it. In different regions of the state and in Southern California, and in particular industries, and obviously in communities of color, and so or already low income tracts around. And so the governor made a commitment very early on in the pandemic that we weren't going to come out of this the same as we went into it. We weren't going to, it's never let a crisis go to waste, I guess, that we were going to include equity in everything we did, from vaccine distribution right to the budget last year, which made unparalleled investments in job growth and economic growth, and particularly in communities hardest hit. As we look forward, making sure, for example, a green transition is a huge priority for the state. And as Estela was just saying, right, there are great opportunities there, but we have to be very mindful about making sure that we take advantage of them. As you saw, I think there's more. We're doing better than the press narrative would have it, right? We've added 100, and this is true nationally, but particularly in California, we've added about 100,000 jobs a month over the last 9 months. We've, if you look at it from the beginning, we dropped farther and faster because we took more health first approach, shut down the economy first, and we're a little slower to come out of it. And as a result, two things have happened. We've had better health outcomes, and our economy has come back faster than many other economies. And so we're adding jobs faster than most other states. But we're still behind in some of the areas that, again, we're hardest hit. Areas like we know sectors like travel and tourism, restaurants and things like that are hardest hit are still struggling, and we're continuing to focus on those. And that's why last year the governor's budget focused on, in many ways on small businesses, from the small business COVID relief grants. That was $4 billion in grants directly into the hands of businesses most impacted in parts of the state and in industries that were most impacted, to PPP conformity, which provided tax relief to hundreds of thousands of California businesses, to the Golden State relief, the Golden State stimulus, which was just checks into the hands of families and others who just needed that extra cash to get through. We're not out of this. Unfortunately, the new variant has us all a little bit obviously trepidatious, waiting for more information about transmissibility and whether it's going to break through the vaccines or not. Again, we're going to stick with the strategy, which is to make sure that we continue to encourage and provide access and provide all the resources we can to make sure people get vaccinated and get a booster. I think we've seen an acceleration in the recommendations around boosters. We're going to make sure that this budget, like last year's budget, focuses on equity and invests in small businesses, but also communities, to make sure that those resources continue to flow, and that as we invest in that transition to clean, that there's a really mindful set of investments in making sure that communities that have been left out are not left out of both the benefits and of the jobs and the economic resources. And so, for example, we have the ZEB go-to-market strategy, and one of the 4 pillars of that is access, making sure that all communities have access through grants, through tax credits and other things to products like zero-emission vehicles that will help make their communities cleaner. So anyway, more to say about this, but it has to be both investments to keep our role as the nation's leading innovation economy, but with a mindfulness that looks at communities, industries, parts of the state that have been left behind. And that has to be baked in from the beginning. And there's no end to that, right? That has to just be part of the California approach for good.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Director Myers. And we'll come back to some of those strategies like the Community Economic Resilience Fund.
Right.
That's going to center community excited about that. Other panelists want to chime in on this question of what we do about California's challenges, as well as celebrating the things that we do well. Mr. Hickey.
Yeah, I will. I look at, we did a survey recently of about 600 small and medium businesses, and some of the direct questions are exactly what Dee Dee was commenting on, and it was around optimism. And so as you look at it in the survey, it showed that like 68% of these businesses were optimistic about where they were going to be a year from now. And the other part is 53% of them said that they're better off than where they were a year ago. So you've got, the uptick where they're going to go and where they were. I think it's huge because we've seen them embrace tools. And I think the part that we've seen the most is like, they're now going like, technology is okay. I'm not scared of technology. I can bring it into my business and make a lot of examples of what it's done. It's also helping with labor shortage. So they've been able to use these voice over IP tools or logistics tools. We have companies like Dependable Highway Express and some of these other ones. They had labor shortage, they had truck shortage. They had to figure out how to get things from point A to point B and follow that product all the way. They had to use technology to get there as well. And then I would say work flexibility. We're on a virtual call right now. Never before would you have done what we're doing before right now and been acceptable with maybe a dog barking in the background or a delivery driver ringing the doorbell, or maybe even choppy, right? Where you're coming in and out of it. And so it's been exciting to see what businesses have done and embraced and the tools that they're using to go forward. And I think that it's only going to get better because the tools and the resources are getting better and they're being educated based on what state officials are providing and what we're doing in the private sector as well.
Right. And by the way, I'm a no judgment moderator. If there are children or dogs or, various other randos that end up walking behind you in the panel, that's just fine. Everyone is welcome.
That's right.
Anyone else want to weigh in on this particular question?
Can I know I've already said a lot, but just to follow up on what David said, the state is investing $6 billion dollars in broadband to make sure, because we have seen that is such a powerful equity tool. And we saw, for example, businesses that were able to transition to a digital storefront did so much better. So just to echo the importance of that as we try to, again, move forward in an equitable way.
Great.
Yes, I completely echo everyone's comments around equitable access. I think one of the biggest challenges is connecting the dots between areas of growth and areas of opportunity. So just thinking about, are there ways that we can leverage the continued success of our largest companies to address systemic inequities across our state? So for instance, going back to my comment earlier around green jobs, there are a number of roadblocks that prevent underrepresented groups from gaining access and working in the green economy, for example. During Lacey's workforce training programs, which have actually been funded by GoBiz, so thank you so much to Director Myers. We specifically focus on engaging participants from underrepresented communities. On average, our participants are 68% Black and Latinx, 25% women, 16% formerly incarcerated. And we actually conduct interviews with our participants to ask about the barriers they see in breaking into the green workforce. And they cite three. One is lack of awareness, like they don't know what green jobs are. Two is lack of experience. They don't have any prior experience in the space. And then three is lack of access, like they don't know how to break into the sector. So to directly address these challenges, we actually identify community-based organizations who directly engage the populations we'd like to serve. And then we provide all of our participants with paid internships to help them build experience in this sector. And then finally, we host a career fair to connect our graduates directly with job opportunities at our Lacey startups and partner organizations. So pulling back kind of big picture, as we think about California's economy, how are these high growth companies integrating diversity, equity, and inclusion into their organizational practice? Where are they recruiting their talent? How is their work supporting underserved communities? What does their civic engagement look like? And just to echo Director Myers, like the strength of our California economy will now and going forward will hinge on collaborative partnerships and all of us working together to connect underrepresented communities to economic growth.
Great, absolutely. And one of the things that you mentioned at the beginning of that is how difficult it is to break into these areas because they're very complex, full of regulations, full of certifications, full of various different things. And complexity is the enemy of equity, right? Because people without the resources can't navigate these sorts of things. Major companies have whole phalanxes of lawyers in order to do it, but we don't, in my view, think often enough in California about how to reduce the complexity in order to create some more on-ramps to these tremendous economic opportunities. Well, as long as we're throwing fastballs, and I was going to use, I'm a Northern California guy. I was going to use a Clayton Kershaw, analogy, but apparently, there's he's going somewhere else. But sorry about that, folks. But in any case, the ports, right? So one of the major challenges that the California economy has, we are home to a tremendous amount of the port traffic, the logistics industry. It's transformed, many of our communities from Los Angeles to the Inland Empire to the Central Valley. And there have been some kinks in this system. And so I'd just like to maybe hear quickly from you, Director Myers. There are a lot of folks that are interested in where are we at now, and is this getting worked out, and what can we do to make sure it's better for the future?
Yeah, the supply chain, right, is so complex. But for those of us in Southern California who are Dodger fans and are Clayton Kershaw fans, let me say unequivocally, we really understand how important those ports are, right, and the source of 40% of the goods that come into our, not just our state, but our country, how important that is to our economy and how important the transition to green ports is to being able to do that sustainably. We all sort of were caught a little off guard by the series of events, right? You saw early in the pandemic, there was a shutdown in manufacturing, particularly in Asia. And then as they started to ramp back up, there was this huge surge in consumer demand. And so there was a bit of like an air bubble in the hose, right, that has continued to wreak havoc across the entire supply chain, not just in California, but around the world. And so we're working really hard with all the stakeholders, starting with the federal government. They've been a great partner on this because they obviously, we all as Americans have a stake in getting this sorted out, but the governor as well. And so it is largely a system of systems of private sector contracts. And so it's not highly regulated, which is why it's so, it's just so complicated and hard to unravel some of the complexities. But the governor, issued an executive order last month or in October that asked the state to do a couple of things, right? Find excessive land for container storage, because excess containers in the ports is a huge problem, to see if there's things we could do around trucks, because that's another piece, from increasing weight limits to providing more drivers, to helping be able to move goods around, to just all the other things that we can do, which again are not substantial. But again, working with our private sector stakeholders, from the ports to the terminal operators to the shipping lines, really just trying to get some more velocity back into the system, while keeping one eye on the role that as we transition to greener ports, to not backslide on that too much. It's, if you've been down to Long Beach or Los Angeles ports, you can see both the number of containers on the docks, the number of ships offshore, and the impact it's having on air quality. On some days that's pretty obvious. And so, trying to keep all of those things in mind. And as we transition to greener ports, making sure that we, one of the things we're looking at is, can we increase job training for those good, high-paying, high road jobs that don't really require college degrees, right, in many sectors of the supply chain. And so we were definitely working with our partners, both government and private sector, to try to create more training opportunities to bring people into career track jobs as we transition to a greener logistics system. And so we're on this every single day. It's really important. And if we can create a more resilient, greener logistics system going forward, then we can, again, take a crisis and turn it into an opportunity.
Great, thank you. So we've talked a little bit about this already, but I wanted to focus in for a second a little bit more on the state of small business and entrepreneurship, right? We've talked about the checks that we've gotten out to people. We've talked about some of the opportunities within the green sector. But when we think about Southern California in particular, and the success and the state of its larger businesses, how should we think about what's going on with our small businesses and the broader environment for entrepreneurship? So Ms. Reyes, do you want to add some more thoughts in that regard, since I know you think about that every day?
Absolutely. Thanks, Micah. Yeah, so it's interesting in our role at Lacey, I work on workforce, but we're also an incubator for startups. So I can now shift to kind of talking about the startup side. So there's a few reasons why the small business and entrepreneurship environment is so vibrant in Southern California. And I'll speak specifically about LA because that's where our work is focused on. But one is startup talent. There is so much creativity and startup talent in Southern California. About 40% of our community in LA is made up of immigrants who are more likely to start businesses than those born in the US. There are also global business opportunities. As highlighted earlier, we have such a unique geography in LA, where we have LAX in the ports, as well as an incredibly diverse community. We're home to people from more than 140 countries, speaking 224 different languages. And this, we all know, and David shared earlier, it's a great place to live and work. There are a few cities that are similar to LA, between world-class talent, proximity to the beach and the mountains, and then just stunning weather year-round. And so just keeping all that in mind, despite the challenges caused by the pandemic, there's still lots of reasons to get excited about entrepreneurship in Southern California. And this kind of mirrors what David was sharing with the optimism from the businesses. So in our work at Lacey, we actually shifted the emphasis of our small business program from Impact Growth Accelerator to a Strategic Resilience Program. The curriculum focused on helping our companies reduce expenses, expand company runways, identify pivot opportunities to maintain visibility, Through our work, we helped our companies to apply for relief funding, preserve jobs, create new jobs, and increase revenues with new business models that they were forming as a result of the pandemic, which is super exciting. And then to answer your other question about just kind of thinking about Southern California's economy and how does it kind of compare across the state. So LA, I think, is much more diversified than San Francisco or Sacramento or even San Diego for founders who are looking for their community. It seems like San Francisco is mostly software, Sacramento is mostly government, and San Diego is mostly medical. But LA has a much more broad-based economy based on its history and location. Aerospace, entertainment, consumer goods, and of course, clean tech, which is at the heart of what we do. We actually, just a quick note, we have an amazing Lacey startup, Ampere, which is at the intersection of aerospace and clean tech. They've actually developed a hybrid electric propulsion system that can be dropped into small turboprop planes to replace their internal combustion engines. So this lowers fuel costs, maintenance, and noise. And earlier this year, Ampere was actually bought by Surf Air in a deal worth more than $100 million. So a lot of continued excitement around potential entrepreneurial opportunity in Southern California, despite all of our challenges.
Right on. Dr. Fairweather.
I guess one thing I'd just like to add to that is I think right now there's even more reason to be optimistic about like future technologies coming out of California. One of the things that happened during the pandemic is that debt got really cheap, which means that there are lots of investors looking to put their money into the future, and a lot of the future is being developed in California, whether it's green tech or remote work technologies, mobile, all of that is happening in California. So I think California is really leading the way in terms of innovation, and that innovation is needed now more than ever before.
Great.
Hey, Micah, one thing I'd love to add there is we're also seeing a lot of companies start up, just like Mr. Reyes talked about as well. And there are a few challenges they're presented with. One is they don't know how to operate digitally at all. Like they don't understand the landscape of how to reach their customer potentially than just what an open door may give them. And so we came out and we built this, it's called the Small Business Digital Ready program. And it's an online curriculum that really takes them through the whole process of developing a digital presence, how you reach your customer. It's completely free as well. We're with LISCLA is really who we've been partnering with there to get that information out to the end users there, which has been really big. And so I'd say that's a big one we're seeing as well. And then the second would be, and this is on supply chain, Director Myers as well. We're seeing a ton of companies that are starting up that are supply chain distributors. And so they're deploying scanners and fleet tracking and everything they can do, because they do also have labor shortage, right? And so they're trying to do as much as they can with that overall process. But I love it. I love the SMB incubators. It warms my heart. It's so awesome to be part of those and see those things coming out. And we just at Verizon love to partner with those companies because they are the future when you think about what's driving the economy with the small and medium business sector.
Sounds good. All right. Well, this has been fun. We've talked about poverty, inequality, ports being crowded up. And so let's shift to an easier topic, the Omicron variant. I mean, I have to admit that, I'm not going to get ridiculously freaked out about this until we have more data, and there's nothing so far that suggests that it's actually more deadly or can evade the vaccines. It may be more transmissible, which actually can be helpful in a variety of different ways. But nevertheless, can't get by without talking about it. But I really want to put it within the context of something we've been talking about here, which is just that the pandemic has reworked our way of living and where we live and where we work and how we work in ways that I don't think we're going to entirely, go back to the way that things were before. And in some ways, in good ways. but there are some significant challenges as well. And so, Mr. Hickey, I'd like to start out with you, and let's dive a little bit more deeply into if we have a little bit more time of seeing each other mainly on Zoom, what kind of an impact do you think that this is going to have on the Southern California economy now and going forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. When I saw the beginning with the pandemic, I'm like, I am not the expert here. And then I saw where you're going with it. I love it. I think we have learned a lot as in the private sector exactly how to tackle business differently than we were facing it before. And I would say there's a few tools that we've really focused on, and that you think of the connectivity. So we're on a platform today with Zoom and trying to communicate. So making sure that small businesses understand how they can communicate internally. I would say the workforce, I said earlier, is super diversified and work from home. And so we've got this new model within even our own model called hybrid. And so you've got employees that are in offices, you got employees that are in homes, and you got employees that are mobile and they're working all over the place. And the one thing they all need is to be connected. And so we've been working to show with these small businesses how you can enable tools that are non-complex. You said it earlier, Mike, about these enterprises have loads of lawyers and IT resources and everything else out there. Well, the small and medium business, they could have an office manager that's the IT manager, the accountant, and everything else. And so, we're trying to give them tools that allow them to be able to deploy things like voice over IP, which is a solution that you just have an internet phone in your home, but the end user is calling you. They don't know if you're in the office there at your home or you're in the airport. It doesn't matter. You're able to answer those. And we give them these things called virtual assistants that make them seem like a much bigger company than they are, but gives them the professionalism that an end user, a consumer would really want. And so we've really deployed those. We're also aggressively expanding network, because at the end of the day, you can have all those tools that run on the top, but if you don't have a great connection, it becomes an issue. And so we're expanding broadband infrastructure across the whole US. Specifically in Southern California, though, it's been a massive demand. You've seen peak rates of what people are actually using on their connection from calls like this. And so Boyle Heights, South LA, downtown, West Side, all those places are continuing to be invested in and driven with infrastructure. And Director Myers, I love that you talked about the permitting and everything else, because that is a place that we spend a lot of time in, and it's getting better. And so it's allowing us to flow through that process fast so we do it correctly and we get it up there and run with it as well. Expanding fiber to the home or the premise or the location is a big deal. And if you've ever been in any side of this, that's not a short-term play. It takes a while to get the fiber in the ground, deploy it to a building, which is why we deployed. Now you have fixed wireless internet. So you've been able to take and get a router in your home with broadband, or a router in your business, and up and running your business in a day. And sometimes it's backup, or sometimes it's the actual primary connection. And everyone's heard the buzz, 5G, 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 right? And so let me tell you, like with 5G, it's an amazing technology that allows you to have fiber type speeds wirelessly without the long setup, which is great for California and infrastructure, because the less that we have to go in the ground, the better across the board, because we can deploy quickly. So you have, like in Los Angeles and Sacramento and some other places, you currently have 5G business internet and 5G home available in many places, which is really helping us displace that side of it, which is a big deal. And then the other part I would say that businesses are facing every single day, which they didn't know, was security threats. And so cybersecurity has been massive. And I think most of the time if you were a small, medium business, you had your business locked down, you were pretty good because everybody was in there. But once everybody went to this diversified workforce, we became very vulnerable. And so we ran a lot of the survey, and there's a really high number or high percentage of our businesses that are investing in like multi-login pro logs. They're also looking at ways in which to secure an endpoint, which is, this is an endpoint, everything's an endpoint out there, just because there's bad actors that are out there that are going after it. And it's not, and it seems like it's complicated, but it's not. Our advice, and which we've been giving SMBs critically around this, is as you deploy new technology, which they all are, make sure you deploy cybersecurity at the exact same time. And it's not cost prohibitive to do so. It's really not expensive. What's expensive is when you get attacked.
Right.
And you're going through that. And so those are just a few of the areas I think that we've spent a ton of time trying to address to make sure if this latest variant was to lock us down in some way, they could continue to run their business.
Yeah, some politicians and political parties wish they would have had better, security, I think. But it's important for businesses as well. And I also love you calling out this resilience. So it's good to have, fiber internet access. It's good to also have a backup through 5G or the other way around. And, we also have natural disasters here sometimes.
Yes.
So businesses need that resilience in order to be able to survive.
Absolutely.
Other thoughts on the way, and I'm glad, by the way, it wasn't a question about the medical science of Omicron. I really appreciate that you didn't pretend to know what you were talking about in that regard. There are a lot of people out there right now with a lot of opinions about the science of this that need to be quiet.
I'm one of those.
Actual scientists talk about it. Yeah. But from the perspective of the things that this panel does know about, right? Any other additional thoughts on, how the, pandemic has and will change Southern California's economy going forward?
Yeah, I would just
More
add,
people. Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
I was going to say that more people are leaving California because of the pandemic. Remote work has enabled people to decide where they want to live independent of where they work. For some people who are able to do those remote work jobs, at Redfin, we track how many home buyers are looking to move into a metro versus out. And since the pandemic, migration out of major metros has increased from 26% of Redfin users to around 29%. In California, it's been more pronounced though. That migration out of Los Angeles doubled since the pandemic. And I think long-term, I'm optimistic about people wanting to move to California because I think fundamentally the reasons people want to live here are because of the weather and the culture and all the amenities that have been mentioned. But I think it is a real challenge for California how to cater to those people and make it a really livable place because during the pandemic, in a lot of ways, it's become less livable.
Yeah, and this speaks to one of the questions that we got in the chat from Gigi Moreno about, California losing 70,000 residents for the first time. And there's this whole narrative about, rich people are leaving California. That is not true. We create more rich people than leave California. The people that are leaving California are overwhelmingly lower income, people of color, and of lower education, right? So we are making it, unfortunately, a state that it's very difficult to be in. And the folks that are coming into California have higher degrees of education, substantially higher degrees of income, and are less diverse than those that are leaving the state. So it's definitely something to track very closely.
There's also migration within the state, like Riverside has become more popular because people leaving Los Angeles are going there instead. But that's a whole other problem, especially when you take climate change into effect, that people are being priced out of some of the most climate resilient areas and being forced into like wildfire territory. And if wildfires keep increasing, that's going to be a whole other housing challenge moving forward.
Great.
Yeah, I would just add that there has been a lot of people moving around, right? But most people are moving around within the state. Dr. Fairweather, you pointed out that people are leaving metro areas, but they're going other places in California. If you look at zip code changes, post office provides that data. You can see that they're not leaving California. And over the last decade, California grew. It just didn't grow as much as some other places, and I think housing costs are in many ways the hardest challenge for people, right? And that is clearly why they move to other parts of the state, right? They can live more economically there, but we do need to figure out how to solve that long term. I think it's going to take longer for us to for the dust to settle on first we have to get over the pandemic and stop with these variants, but to see what effect it really has on on that work-life relationship and where people live and how they work and all of those things. But I will just say one last thing. It's no accident that Zoom, which is one of the technologies that has allowed us to continue and for the economy to continue, was born in California, and that's not an accident. It's our culture, our technology, the innovative spirit of the state. So I think we're going to continue to produce solutions to the changes that are going to happen all around us all the time.
Absolutely. Well, a couple more questions, and then I'll move on to the audience. Although a lot of what the audience has been asking is really what we've been addressing around, is California real when we see companies moving in and out? I mean, I will say, again, we are creating more. That's actually not something. I worry about equity all the time. I worry about racial, geographic, economic equity all the time. I do not worry about companies leaving California. To your point, almost all company movement is within California, and we are creating substantially more companies than are leaving the state.
And then let me just say, this is a burr under my saddle. Tesla, right? A great company born here in California. State provided tremendous resources to help Tesla get started. Tesla has provided great resources back to California, improving that people will drive zero emissions vehicles if you build good ones that, and we need more, but all that, because Tesla has proven that people will drive them. We now see companies like GM saying, yes, we're going to go totally zero emissions by 2035. Tesla's not really, they're moving their headquarters. What does that mean? They still have their Fremont manufacturing facility, which they're growing by 50%. They just opened a new megapack battery production facility, which they're going to continue to expand. They're expanding and investing more in their R&D, which, by the way, is staying here in California. Yeah, they're a growing company, so they're going to manufacture in China, and they're going to manufacture in Germany to serve world markets. They're building a battery plant in Austin, Texas. But 50% of their buyers are still in California. Their R&D is still in California. Their manufacturing and battery facilities are still in California. I don't know what it means to say they're leaving.
Well, it means that he's going to be doing his angry tweeting from another state.
Yeah. And and enjoying the zero state income tax.
Yeah, I mean, that said, and the same is true of Charles Schwab. On the day they announced moving their quote unquote headquarters, they also announced the opening of an innovation center in San Francisco that had more people working for it than the folks that were working at the quote unquote headquarters. That said, this is a significant challenge, and we don't need to gloss over it, especially to the extent that it then trickles down into the the impacts on people within our communities. But Mr. Hickey, you were going to add.
Yeah, I was going to share. So it was one of the questions we asked in this survey that we ran, and it was specifically around how important was flexibility of location as you were hiring. And it was like 76% said it's what's brought up almost on every single person that comes in, and as important to them as health insurance, like flexibility and location. And the main factors were, how long is my drive time? Is it worth it for really to do it? And can I do my job as successful virtually as I could in person? And so what we're finding is, pre-pandemic, we would have said no. Like, no, you got to be in the office, be right next to me so I can see what you're doing. Now we're, in the prongs of this, we're seeing what people are actually doing, and they're hiring people outside of their locations, although in the same state, to back up what Dee Dee said as well. The other part, which I'll give a selfish plug, is we have Blue Jeans, which is a competitor to Zoom, which is also headquartered in San Jose. And so it's a California business there. And we bought that right at the start of the pandemic, and not knowing how big this was going to be. But it has totally changed how we operate internally, and then the enterprise and small and medium business customers out there. So selfish plug, but also a California company. So I thought it's worthwhile to do it. But I agree with what was said. Mobility and flexibility around workforce and location is huge.
Great. Well, Dr. Fairweather, we've touched on this a little bit, but I want to go into it in more detail. I mean, this is the SCAG conference. What SCAG does is transportation and land use, right? And really thinking very much about housing and how people live and how they get from one place to another. So, given all of this, not just the pandemic, but, sort of the current state of the environment, how should we be thinking in California, in Southern California in particular, about investing and increasing the housing supply and our housing markets? There's also a question that the audience has posed around density, and the extent to which we're prioritizing density versus more single family home type communities. So very interested in your perspective on that.
Yes, so let me start just with the housing problem in California, just to get on the same page as everyone. One of the things that has been really great about California as the economy is its growth, as we've touched on. There are so many businesses that have started here. So many people have wanted to move to California over the years because it's a great place to live. But there's this problem that people get here and they may not build literal walls, but they build policy walls to prevent other people from getting the same things that they've gotten. So restrictive zoning is a great example of that. People not wanting to build denser housing in their neighborhood. Some of that might just be that they want their neighborhood to stay the way that it was when they originally bought their home. But unfortunately, it means California can't build enough housing to supply all the people who do want to live here, who are moving here. And that's created just a huge affordability crisis in California. Other things like Prop 13 have made it so the people who have been living here the longest get the lowest property taxes. Again, that doesn't help people who are moving here or who maybe are recent immigrants. All those people lose out just because we aren't building enough housing. This problem has been building for a long time, and I'm really optimistic about the recent policy changes that have happened, where you can now build 4 plexes on a single unit. And also ADUs, that's like the granny flats, the mother-in-law units have been legalized. It seems like there's a lot of local pushback. A lot of local neighborhoods have tried to do everything they can to not let those laws go through the way that they were intended. So I'm not really sure what the overall impact is going to be. It's a real problem that once housing costs get high, the person who bought the house at, say, $800,000, when only maybe 10 years ago it was worth like $400,000, they don't want their home to go back down in value. They want to get the same increase in wealth that their parents got or previous generations got. So it's a real tough political problem, and I'm very sympathetic to like how hard it is to solve, but it really is the big thing that's holding back California's ability to grow even further, is that there aren't enough homes. I don't know if that answered your question. I think there's something in there about transit. Transit and increased housing supply go hand in hand, because when you have more housing units, you need a way for people to get around, and cars are definitely not sustainable. We don't want to go in that direction. I mean, electric cars are better than other cars, but I think we want to lower the cost of transit and invest in more public transit. And now with COVID, or with the pandemic and people working from home, I think we have an opportunity to rethink transit and maybe make it more localized. I went to high school in Santa Monica. I loved riding the big blue bus. I thought it was a great transit system. You can go anywhere in Santa Monica on it. I think California would benefit from seeing more of that kind of transit that's more neighborhood focused, because people, if they're working from home, they're not going to be going across the metro to get to their office. They're probably just going to be going to the local coffee shop or dropping their kids off at daycare or school. And transit is so important for that. And somebody also mentioned, why are women at the bottom? Transit, for the most part, is centered around the work lifestyles of men. If we rethink transit to think about where women go on their day, they go to the grocery store, they go to daycare, they go to the library, wherever. I think that we can think about transit more equitably instead of just focusing it on taking people to and from work.
That's great. And thank you so much we're just incorporating the audience, and even like, thanks. I didn't have to do that. So thank you so much. Any other advice to skag, right, as they think about the housing supply and transportation in Southern California?
I don't think we should let perfect be the enemy of good enough. I think any additional housing unit is going to be good for California's growth. I mean, the greatest need is definitely when it comes to affordable housing, because they've been left behind the longest, but sometimes ensuring affordable housing is what's prioritized ends up slowing down other construction projects. So I like the top-down approach of just changing zoning, but I think it really needs to be pretty strictly enforced to make sure that no wealthy neighborhood is just able to lobby their way out of being included in those law changes. But I'm sure the Dee Dee might have something else to say about that. I'll defer to her on the actual politics of zoning.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. it's the state passed and the governor signed a whole suite of bills that many years in the making to do exactly as you've described, right? Allow more construction on single family plots, allow more infill housing. But in the story in the LA Times today, it said basically the entire Los Angeles City Council opposes the changes, and they'll have to allow for some of the implementation. I think the state's gonna increasingly fight local jurisdictions on not moving forward with these laws. So there is much work yet to be done. But and I know somebody asked why are we encouraging housing around some transit corridors, and it's basically to reduce, right, if you can build closer to public transportation. And again, Dr. Fairweather was also talking about how we need to rethink that a little bit, but that will allow us to move towards greener lifestyles where people can either use public transit or they're closer to where they can both buy their groceries and work, particularly as we transition to more flexible work arrangements. And so there is no silver bullet to this problem. It's really complicated. We also saw just yesterday, right, another really massive housing development project in North LA County, where I grew up in Santa Clarita. So you now have the Newhall Land Project and the Century Project, and that's tens of thousands of new homes with no gas hookups, which is is interesting. Obviously, electricity, and if as we move towards a carbon-free grid, that will be a greener lifestyle. Plus, they have to have tens of thousands of charging stations for electric vehicles, and they also have to do fire mitigation. So there are ways to create more housing. It's more expensive when you factor in all of those considerations, but so we need all of the above, right? And that's sort of the state's approach, is all of the above. We need more urban infill. We need more changes to zoning. We need to build thoughtfully in new places where environmental circumstances and fire and things like that will allow us to do it. We have more tools to kind of approach that, but there's no easy solution to this, and it is the thing I hear most from the business community, and the thing that I worry about most as both as a resident of California and also in my current role.
Great. Well, maybe just to quickly conclude, this segment, although we did kind of pull in audience questions, I want to pull in a few more after we wrap up. But Director Myers, I'd love to hear a little bit from you on the Community Economic Resilience Fund. We're really excited about this and hope that it's a way to get a better set of jobs and outcomes for people, because big tech and big universities and stuff are really great. But we need good jobs across a range of different industries, small business, manufacturing, and the rest. So talk to us a little bit about this program and your hopes for it.
I'm so glad you asked, Micah. Yes, this is something I know that Cal Forward has been working on, obviously, and the state as well. In last year's budget, the governor included $600 million for something we call SURF, the Community Economic Resilience Fund, as Micah said. And basically it's a longer term regional development strategy and process, working with basically 13 regions around the state to produce and to bring all stakeholders to the table, to do this in a much more equitable and kind of 360 view process. So to work from the bottom up, working with communities to build long-term economic development plans that focus on pandemic recovery, but more than that, on equity and on future jobs, and doing that in a way that's sustainable, so green. So we're really excited about it. We're in very early stages. We're in the process of getting feedback on the regions as we've defined them. Not everyone agrees with the approach, but we're pretty close. And then once we do that, then we'll provide planning grants to each of the regions, and then they'll go and come back to us with a plan, and then we'll start to fund projects within each of those plans. And again, it's $600 million over the next 6 or 7 years. And we're really excited about the opportunity to make sure that we focus on, again, bringing more jobs into regions, regardless of where they are, but each region has different challenges, making sure that those are going to be good high road jobs, career track jobs that are also green jobs, and that we look at, trying to create industry clusters that will provide resilient growth in those sectors. So again, we're really excited about it. We're moving forward on it in really in a timely way. And I'm sure you'll all hear more about it in the various regions where you work. Los Angeles will be its own region.
Great.
But others in Southern California. So
yeah, thanks, Director Myers. This is very consistent with the work that Jenna Hornstock and others have been leading at SCAG on their inclusive economic strategy. And we really have to deliver for folks. So let me turn to you on that, Ms. Reyes. So, we've had questions in the chat about, the people leaving the state. We've had questions in the chat about the challenges that women have had in this economy. From your perspective, what are some of the most important things that, we can be doing as a city, county, region, and state on these issues?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things that we have tried to approach at Lacey is really thinking like holistically about these issues and how to actually, utilize and work with our companies in being part of this inclusive economic recovery. So for instance, we actually have an impact scorecard that our companies have to work towards, which highlights their impact economically through creating jobs, environmentally through all of their work as a clean tech startup, and then socially. So they actually have to share a little bit more about their work around diversity, deployment, and disadvantaged communities. So thinking about how we can really engage all of our assets at the table to be part of the solution. And then also just wanted to address the question in the chat and echoing Dr. Fairweather on like how to include like women's perspective. So I think to the point highlighted that women are still on the bottom, and completely agree. Like we see it across the board in all of our work. We have fewer women founders than male founders. We have fewer women participants in our workforce development programs because traditionally all of those industries were seen as male and all of the role models traditionally have been male. So in order to tackle this issue, I think there's kind of two sides to it. One is like providing programs to empower more women and girls to pursue opportunities in the tech, STEM, and clean tech space. And then the second is addressing kind of institutional challenges and barriers that women might face in getting into this ecosystem, in getting promotions and getting into leadership positions where they have decision-making power. So I think kind of on both sides, we actually are trying to work on this at Lacey, but would love to collaborate with you all on how we can make this more equitable for gender as well.
Great. We also had another easy question in the chat about technology, which is that, when we've looked at things like the, economic development department and the situation that happened there, whether or not people got their Golden State stimulus checks as quickly as they did. I think there's like this, we are apparently the world's most amazing innovation economy. We are, right? That's what I spent all my time studying in my last job. But then it doesn't seem to translate into the provision of state services, which is essential for the growth of businesses. So what if anything can we do to improve that situation as a state?
Yeah, there has been quite a bit of investment. A new leader of EDD in recent months, and a SWAT team in there to try to improve things. As we saw during the pandemic, the explosion in people seeking and needing that unemployment benefit didn't always get them in a timely manner. And somebody pointed out that someone they knew just got their Golden State stimulus check. So all I can say on that is, Micah, to your point, it is sometimes frustrating that we could look around and and there are solutions to make this work better. We're working on it. The state is working on it. There's more that we need to do, and we should be a leader in this, and we haven't historically been, and that's unfortunate. So, but we are making progress, and hopefully, but before we get to the next recession, and there will be one, that will be further along and better able to serve people who need it when they need it most.
Great. Thanks. Southern California Association of Governments is a association of local governments, right? And so, there's been some content in this panel that has, been critical of certain local governments, although others have done, a better issue. So let me phrase this question in a positive way, which is, what are the opportunities for, the state and localities and others to work collectively on resolving the issue of the undersupply of housing that's impacting everyone? Or are there opportunities? It's kind of gotten into this, fairly contentious period. Dr. Fairweather.
Well, I think I think that the need for governments to work together is going to increase because, well, for one, I think the best example is climate change. There are going to be parts of California that become less livable, whether it's in wildfire country or in low-lying places on the coast or along riverbeds, like in Sacramento, they have a lot of flooding issues as well. There are a lot of places where people are going to be displaced, and they're going to have to sometimes go to a place that's outside of their original government jurisdictions. They will have to move to other places. So it's their problem too, that they need to build more housing because all of California is going to need more housing. I think we just kind of need like a mindset shift that it's not what's best for the Beverly Hills or Santa Monica. It's what's best for all of Southern California, and even, the whole country and the world would be even better if we could get into that state of mind. Because if everybody just goes into protectionist mode and wants to protect their own home values, there are going to be a lot of people who maybe their basement apartment is flooded and they have nowhere to go, and housing is even more expensive if we don't start working on these problems.
Absolutely. Yeah, we talk about creating a livable California, but our refusal to build homes is literally killing people. So we're taking seriously the live part of that sentence, and we want to address homelessness. We want to address displacement. We want to be more resilient to these natural disasters. We're just going to have a complete mindset shift. I mean, a lot of these communities, look exactly the way that they did when I was born years ago. And there are twice as many people in the world than there were then. Twice as many people. Some of them are going to have to live around here. And these climate crises that you're talking about, Dr. Fairweather, are not just happening in California, right? Our stuff is kind of small potatoes compared to some of the stuff around the world. And those folks are going to need a place to live as well. So figuring out how to manage growth and do so in an equitable way is the only thing we can do, right? And I sincerely hope that that's something that all communities that are part of SCAG, that are part of our California community here, are committed to doing. So yeah, editorializing over. But any final, let's do sort of a lightning round of final thoughts as we wrap up the panel. I'll start with you, Mr. Hickey.
Yeah, I would just say, well, first of all, thanks for having me. I would say from our perspective, from the state of California, keep investing in technology and infrastructure. There's so much happening in the private sector around enabling whatever that may be, from a transportation and analytics around things that we've discussed today. And so we're working heavily on that. And I know Director Myers, we talked about permitting and all those things. So as easy as we make those processes, the more we can get infrastructure. And that's not just a Verizon thing, that's everybody, right? And so I appreciate the opportunity to represent the kind of the technology side, but infrastructure for us will help as we enable the rest of our, if you think about everything else that's coming on top of the network.
Great. Ms. Reyes.
Yeah, so I'm seeing all the notes in the chat too, just about like tying all of our commentary with the economic forecast and really kind of grounding ourselves in some of the really big challenges that we're facing here. So I was privileged to participate in SCAG's like economic recovery work and all of the kind of information that went into their report. So I think just in terms of next steps, I would love to kind of figure out how we can all collaborate and continue this conversation after this panel, to kind of think about what role can each of us play in inclusive economic recovery and growth, and actually put goals that we can all work towards together.
Sounds good. Dr. Fairweather.
I'll just add that I've been kind of hard on California about its housing problems, but those problems are really going to be in many more places in the coming years. The housing affordability crisis is spreading to other cities across the US. Austin is like a big migration destination in California, but their home prices are up 40% from the beginning of the pandemic. So I think, like many things, California has the opportunity to lead when it comes to innovating, and there should just be more innovation in terms of how we think about urban planning and housing, just constructing more housing.
Great. Director Myers will give you the last word and turn it back over to the conference organizers.
Well, thank you, Micah. Thanks for hosting and moderating, and thanks to SCAG for having us. I would just say that we have a kind of a once in a generation opportunity with the the bipartisan infrastructure bill and the reconciliation bill that will hopefully pass and provide unprecedented amount of resources for all of us. And we as the state of California look forward to working with all the local jurisdictions to figure out and to partner in the ways that I think we just touched on, to invest in infrastructure, whether it's broadband or human infrastructure or ports and logistics or housing, which is another form of human infrastructure, to really and for California to lead, right? I think that's we would all like to see that. Our problems, as a governor's fond of saying, it's a coming attraction, right? So the things that are issues here will likely be issues in other parts of the country. But working together with this moment, with these resources, we really can make tremendous progress. So look forward to working with all of you as we go forward to do that. So thank you.
Great. All right, back to you folks.
Excellent. Well, that was a fantastic panel. Thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to be part of this today and join us and share that great information.